Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, whether this is your first time or you are returning. I'm so happy to be here with you today. My name is Katie and today I am here to help you find some grounding, to help you find your center, to help you connect into what matters. As I'm recording this, we are in wild times. We are in big times. We are in wild times. And we are in these times where, what is happening in the world has such an influence over our day-to-day lives. And maybe you are someone who has had your life already directly impacted by the forces at play that have entered into the world in the way they have recently. Maybe you are someone who, like me, hasn't really been affected directly yet, but knows that the wave is coming. And in the meantime is sitting here knowing the deep hurt that is already playing out in the world, and knowing that one day it's going to reach me, and sitting in a place of what do I do about it? And I know I'm in circle, I'm in connection with so many people who are in a similar place. Like, what do we do? What do we do when we look out on a world that's terrible, that in a lot of ways is heading in a direction that is directly contrary to where we need to be going? I can sit in the world I live in and look out my window and directly tune in the mass harm that is already at play in the world. When I look out the window, I get to look up at my hometown mountains that have been burned and burned again and burned again, because where I live in northern New Mexico, the landscape here has just been ravaged by forest fire again and again and again. And, oftentimes, when we live in a balanced world, really is what I'm trying to say, is fire comes through in a way that's destructive, but it's destructive in a cycle that turns into opportunity for rebirth, for regrowth, right? For regeneration. But fire, as I've known it in my life on the land I live in here in the Jemez Mountains, is that fire comes through, and because we live in a world that's so out of balance, when fire comes through, it is destructive in a way that the land is just obliterated. And in the 20 or so years since the fire that burned my home mountains came through, very, very little has grown back. Certainly the ponderosa forest hasn't grown back, but instead more shrub oak locust type thing. And I guess we're starting here today because, I opened today's conversation talking about whether or not you've been directly impacted by the destructive forces at play in our world, or maybe whether you've been living in a nice bubble where you aren't directly impacted, but you can feel into the effects in the world around you. And reality is, it's not either or, right? Any time something happens, like what is happening in our world right now, and with this new government taking over and just systematically deconstructing anything that provides good in this country, and trying to be a force of harm so that, this government can gain more power, right? This narrative that, God, we've been living for far too long, right? Hundreds, thousands of years this way humans have lived in this world with this power structure, right? But so whenever anything happens to anyone, right, the effects ripple out. And that's not at all whatsoever to say that the impact is equally spread out, right? When people who have lived here for decades get a knock on their door and people rush in and take them away and take away everything that they've built in this life and send them off to a different country, right? That person is going to feel it the most fiercely. And it ripples out because it's not okay. And that ripple sends out a destructive wave that we can all feel. So just feeling into that for a moment. Right? And again, that's going to impact, the circles, the rippling out circles on different levels. So the invitation here is to recognize, yes, you can feel into it. And because you can feel into it, it does impact you. But no, it's not the same. And so for some people, right, if you're like me, you're sitting here in a space where it's like, okay, it's not really directly impacting me yet. Or maybe you are so privileged as to be like, oh, everything that's happening, nothing's ever going to touch me. Wherever you're sitting, directly impacted, indirectly impacted, kind of sitting way off, doesn't matter for this practice. We get to sit here and we get to feel into what is happening. And then feeling what we're doing is we're actually connecting into reality. So I talk about this all the time, right? We can walk through life sort of living life through the lens of our heads, like severed mind from body, cut off from our bodies, cut off from felt connection to reality. And in this way, we keep ourselves separate from reality. And in this way, we don't have to feel. And if we don't have to feel, we don't actually get to be present in reality. And we do this because in a way, it's more pleasant, right? If you don't have to feel the harmful effects of reality, you can just live up here in whatever world you've created. And that's what our mind does, right? Our mind creates narratives. Our mind creates reality in the way that we either actively create it or maybe forces from outside, like our parents, our schools, our churches, right, have imprinted us with these stories, with these narratives. And we can live life, up in our heads, living whatever stories have been created. And that's not reality. That's not reality. Maybe it touches upon reality, but that's not reality. The only way we get to be present in reality is through these powerful sensing bodies that we are. So when I speak to feeling, what I'm really talking about, is being, is truly experiencing life. Being in tune, in touch with reality. Living reality. So as we are present in and as these human bodies that we are, when we're fully embodied, feeling, sensing, letting emotions move through us, this is the only way in which we are truly present in reality. As soon as we cut ourselves off from all this, from our ability to sense and feel and emote, we have severed ourselves from reality. And this is the world we live in, right? This is the world we live in where humans have been actively taught to disconnect, sever mind from body, live fully up in our heads. And the reason that's been taught is because this is how we are controlled. We're controlled because the narratives that are taught to us, that are told to us, they can live freely up in our heads. And when our bodies try to speak up with emotion, that gut feeling or the rage pouring through you or the grief pouring through you, that something isn't right here. Well, we've been taught to push that down, to ignore that, to not trust that, to fear that. So we can continue to live lives up in our heads, which just means living life disconnected from reality, living life just caught up in the narratives that we've been taught. And that's what creates the world we live in. What creates the world we live in is when someone can rise to power just spewing made up stories, completely cut off from truth, completely cut off from reality, can tell someone this is the way it is. And because people are so cut off from feeling, from emotion, from their bodies and all the intelligence that is living in and as your body, again, when we're cut off from that, it's easy to control, to manipulate. So I teach embodiment for a long list of reasons. I speak to embodiment as kind of this like root, right? We have all these problems in our world and tracing them all back to the same festering root system. Like, oh, we are disembodied. We have lost this ability to be in tune with self, to be in tune with all that we are, to be in tune with these beautifully powerful, intelligent bodies and beings that we are. Well, we're cut off from that. We've severed this connection, and in doing so, we've severed connection from reality. So humanity right now is just living all these narratives that aren't actually in tune with reality. How do we heal that? We tune in. We feel. We learn to feel into self. And understand that this is a process. This is a path. This isn't something you do all at once. There's a kind of flip side of this. As I was brought up in what I often speak to as the Church of Science and Engineering, there's a whole lot of good, right? There's a whole lot of good that is taught and done in that world. And the power of your mind to be able to think and take in information and process it, make decisions off of it, being very data driven. There's a power there. And often over there, I was taught, well, if you're trying to live in that world and feelings or emotions are percolating up, right, that's going to kind of like mess up, the experiment you're doing. If you're sidetracked by your grief of the world, that's going to mess up your experiment. So you have to be able to push that away. And there's some truth to that. But feel into this, what happens then when we live our whole lives that way? Right? When we live our whole lives disconnected from our feelings, when we spend all our life pushing it away because we've been told it's unskillful. We've been taught to fear it, which some other churches do. So what we have here is a sort of playground, right? And this is so much of what I'm speaking about today. I know we just had a powerful conversation about this in this kind of New Earth circle that I facilitate with this beautiful group of women, this powerful group of women. It's amazing. And in that circle, we're talking about this ability to be discerning. Like as we're walking through life, when is it skillful to be fully in tune with your emotions, right? To be so deeply feeling into your body that you're really feeling you are living experiencing the world through your body, as your body. And in that way, it's like you are one with reality. Because the other end of the spectrum, which would be you've like pushed that away because you have something important here to focus on. And so even as, emotion or sensation arises, you push it away because you need to stay focused here. And knowing that sometimes the first is what's skillful, sometimes the second is what's skillful. Most of the time moving through life. So you wake up, you're taking a shower, making breakfast. Maybe you have roommates or family members, so you're having conversation. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone, getting ready to go drive your car. Where is your attention? Where is your consciousness? Are you fully conscious to the task at hand, what you're doing in the world? Maybe that's a conversation, maybe that's cooking breakfast, so that your full consciousness is here and you're kind of pushing away anything else. So if a feeling or an emotion rises up, you can kind of just like push it away. Or if, fear for what's happening in the world rises up, you can kind of just push it away because your full focus needs to be here. Or are you in a space, and I think what I'm arguing here is that there's a space where we can be in most of the time as we're living life, where we get to hold our consciousness in more than one space. We get to be present to what is arising as we are present to what we are doing. So as I'm cooking breakfast in the world, or in the morning, when I'm cooking breakfast in the morning, and my partner's talking about what's going on in the world, I can be present to what I'm doing while I'm present to him, while I'm simultaneously present to the impact of everything, what is arising in my body. And as I'm in tune with what's happening in my body, right? Feelings, emotions, intuitions, thoughts, I can hold space for all of it. And when we're present to some degree to everything that's happening within us, this is when we can be discerning. So this is when I can then be discerning, be like, wow, what he's saying is really important. And it's hitting me in a way that's like, I have to go do something about this today. I have to go take action in this way to try to change the world. I need to go take action in this way to be a better person in my life, because what he's saying about what's happening there on the global stage, well, I actually kind of see the same thread of something I'm doing in my life, and now I'm really recognizing that's okay, not okay, so I need to go change that. Or maybe an emotion is rising in a way that you're like, I don't really know what all is here, but there's something really big here, and I need to give myself time to go sit with this emotion, to maybe let it consume me, to be just fully present within it, because there is something here. Maybe it's something to be released, maybe there's something to be healed, something to be alchemized within me, but there's something here and it needs more of my time, more of my attention, more of my conscious attention. So see the sort of playground that we have here, the sort of playground that we're working in. I'm not going to go too much more in depth in it. This is something I really, like I said, I was teaching this, really focused on this in the circle I'm holding now. And just a little speaking up here to the fact that I am going to be holding more circles. That's something that's allowed for me to do this year, is to open my circles up to the public. And so if you want to be in deeper practice with me, to go deeper into teachings and this embodiment work, this practice, know that I am going to be bringing those circles to everyone, right? I'll be holding them on Zoom. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel, to my newsletter, to make sure you know when those are coming. So as we're sitting in this space, right, I want to kind of bring this home. I open to this question that I know a lot of us are holding right now. It's like, as we're sitting in this space where such terrible things are happening in our world, and we don't have the power to directly stop it or change it in a way that, would like really make a mass impact. What do you do? What do we all do? And again, we had this whole conversation about how we're all living these lives where we're impacted in different ways. Maybe you're someone who has already been directly impacted by recent events. Maybe you're someone who has been impacted historically by something, and you're like fired up because you think this is something that we should be working towards, but we're not, right? So for me, the example is my whole forest, right? My mountains, right? The whole forest burned down. It's gone, and it never came back. And that's because of climate change. And I am fired up because I want people to care about this, but we're not actively working to that. Instead, we've stirred up all this other chaos. We've made problems that aren't problems. It's just hatred and fear and anger that are festering, right? So instead of actively focusing on that which I believe we need to focus on, we're just creating more problems. Or maybe, you're someone who lives in a beautiful, perfect bubble, untouched by everything. Again, it doesn't matter for the purposes of this conversation. It matters. I want you to know it matters. But for the purposes of this conversation, this practice here, what matters here is that we are all connected in all of it. And when there's harm being done over here, it's going to impact us over here. And as sensing beings, which we all are to varying degrees, right? And as I'm here teaching and doing the work I do because I want more of humanity to be able to sense and feel, right? This is a little side note, but we have this whole thing around like being an empath, right? Are you an empath? Are you not an empath? Some of us are naturally brought into this world. Like we just feel, we just do. But we're all human. We are all meant to feel. And to varying degrees, we've all been either, taught skillfully how to work with that, or maybe we've been taught to push that away, to suppress that, to cut ourselves off from that. But the point being, we're all sensing beings. And there's a reason for that. We are sensing beings because we are life itself. We are all different nodes in this web that is life itself. And so if we're not in tune with what's happening to somebody else in this great web of life, or to the land, the forests, the oceans, well, there's a problem there because we've cut ourselves off. We've severed ourselves from what is real, what is true. Well, what is real, what is true is that we are all connected, right? So we can, I speak to this as kind of this interwoven biological and spiritual lens. So maybe you attune more to biology and can think about like physically, biochemically, the web of life that connects us all. Maybe you think about it spiritually, for whatever that means. I sit in a space where I hold space for both. We are all connected in ways that just go so far beyond anything your mind is ever going to be able to comprehend. So, you can take note in your mind, like, yeah, this is, where we're connected through the air we breathe, the water we drink, all these different things. But just know that the ways we are connected go so far beyond anything your mind's ever going to be able to comprehend. which again is another reason I teach embodiment, because our minds aren't made to hold reality. Our bodies are the thing. I'm searching for a word here. Our bodies are the vessels, the physical beings, that are made to be tuned into reality. Just another note on that. I know I've invoked a whole bunch of different threads here, so I'm going to try to weave it all back together at the end here. It's bringing us back to the fact that, whoever you are, to whatever degree you're either physically or emotionally or spiritually or whatever way you are being impacted by what's happening in the world right now, knowing that you are being impacted. And if you're here still listening to me, then I'm going to assume that you're not the kind of person who just wants to cut yourself off from it and go live in a bubble and build a fortress around that bubble. So if you're still listening to me here, I'm going to assume you're not that person, but you're the person that wants to do something. You want to do something about this world we live in. And the question is, when you can't immediately go do something that feels like it's going to actually make the impact that you want it to make, what do you do? What do you do? And it's not an easy answer. It's not an easy answer. I wish I could give you a 3-step formula to solve that. But if anyone's doing that, I promise you it's BS. Maybe there's something good in there, but no. What do we do? What do we do? Well, let me try to, I've been answering that the whole time, and I answer that in all of the YouTube videos or writings or anything I put out there. So that's what I'm holding space for. Truly, this big, big question. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Let's take a moment to kind of return back into self as we hold space for this question. Because I just told you I can't answer it for you. But what I can do is give you tools and perspective to help guide you along that path to the answers that are right for you, that are meant for you. What do you do? Well, we hear it all the time. I don't like hearing it, but it's a truth that I wrestle with. That we as individuals can't save the world. What do we do? So feeling into that, breathing into self as you bring that question to mind. What can you do? I say this all the time. What can you do? Well, it begins with the smallest of things. Maybe it's a small action, a smile you give to a stranger. Maybe it's not even so much an action, but a shift in your consciousness. I've spoken to this, and I recorded a whole podcast on it. Maybe I'll try to remember to put that down in the notes. But the power of a shift in consciousness, the decision, oh, that emotion, I'm actually going to feel it today. What does that do? How does that change you? And how does that change how you show up in the world? Maybe it's something big, like quitting that job and go starting the business that'll actually do something for the world. Or maybe you're one of the lucky ones and actually love your job and you get to show up more fully for it because you know it does make an impact in the world. I think the whole point here is so many of us these days are feeling hopeless, and I understand the feeling of not being able to take big enough sweeping action that feels like it's actually going to make a difference. And it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's an important truth that needs to keep being said. That all we can do and what actually matters is all the ways you show up. From the smallest things to the biggest things, it all matters. and bringing more consciousness to how you show up for yourself, for the world you're part of, your communities, the ecosystems you're part of, your jobs, your creative projects. It all matters. And what matters now is that we're bringing more consciousness to all of it. We're bringing more love-filled, light-filled consciousness to all of it. We're holding that compass towards a brighter world that is possible. We're not letting our focus get pulled into the dark, the hopelessness, the despair, the fear. Yeah, if you need to spend a little bit of time there because it actually serves to bring attention to the fact that you feel hopeless, you feel fearful, you feel deeply grief-stricken. Yeah, bring the attention there, your consciousness, to that space that matters. That serves. Where can you put your attention that serves in any one moment? Where can you put your attention? Because where you put your attention is where you allow energy to flow. To me, that's what lives at the heart of this whole question. And knowing that you're never going to get that perfect, but how can you get better at it? How can you develop this skill that is knowing where your attention best serves? Does it serve to have your attention and therefore your energy somewhere outside of yourself so that you can move energy in that space outside of yourself to try to solve problems, to try to heal the world, to try to make change that matters? Does it serve to turn that inward into self so that you are shifting, changing, healing, transforming, alchemizing that which is you? And as we live here in this embodiment space, I'm often speaking to as this new earth space, what I'm doing is really holding space for this way of being where we recognize that it's all the same. Again, because we are all just one big web of life. So what happens within us impacts what happens outside of ourselves. What happens outside of ourselves impacts what happens within us. So it's all important, it all matters, but what matters most is knowing in any moment, where are you putting your attention? Where are you letting your energy flow? Learning to develop that. And if you want more help developing that, sign up for one of my programs, one of my spaces. Again, looking ahead to probably the springtime to begin those circles, opening those circles to the public, starting to really open up that new earth embodiment space that, I've been facilitating these circles for a while in a more enclosed group, right? It's not just open to the public. You kind of have to work your way into it. And I do that because it protects it. It protects it, and I make sure that people who are prepared and aligned, make it into that space. But I am looking to open up to the public. So that means you, if hanging out in this space where you actually get to interact with me and interact with a community of people who are holding a collective intention for this new earth, for this brighter, more beautiful way of being on planet Earth, for ourselves, and for the greater web of life we are all part of. Again, make sure you're subscribed here on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter. Visit upwardslopes.com to get subscribed to that. Over there, you'll get a free guided meditation. Lots going on. Head over to Upward Slopes. You can check out my different embodiment workshops. Maybe something there sings to you. And I have a new ebook of my little baby I've been tending to and caring for and bringing through all of last year. My ebook, really laying the foundation for the embodiment path. And there's something like 10 plus different embodiment practices, just different things for you to try out, see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Okay, I'm gonna leave us there for now. If something here has spoken to you today, please leave a comment. Let me know if there's something you would like me to go into in more depth. I would love to hear it so that this is a little bit more of a two-way conversation and not just me here on this side of the camera. All right, big love to you, and I look forward to catching you next time.